Story 1, my boss thought he could fire me or bully me into quitting, but I had the last laugh. I was hired for a temp position last year. It was a part-time job that fit perfectly with my uni schedule with a pretty popular, prestigious company. The first couple weeks were great, I got along with my colleagues and my boss seemed nice enough. After some time though, everything drastically changed. I still don't know why. My boss tried to get me to agree to a mutual termination of my contract, claimed I was smoking and doing drugs in the office. I obviously didn't, immediately offered a drug test, told me that a written record was submitted to HR while refusing to let me see it, tried to start a fight with me numerous times, sent me on personal errands during working hours. This post would be 10 pages long if I got into everything he put me through. Suffice to say it was an awful couple of months. I'm pretty sure that after me not initially agreeing to leave, he tried to fire me, but since Hess only in a middle management position within a fairly large company, one of his bosses probably said no for some reason, so I got to stick it out with menial bullshit tasks until the end of my contract. For the last couple months, he completely ignored me, didn't answer my emails, didn't give me any new tasks even though I asked, and then pretended I didn't to claim I was being malicious and refusing to work, while there were numerous people present when I asked for new tasks. And yet, I stuck around. Up until my very last day. Would it have been smarter to leave sooner? Yes, most definitely. But the pay and benefits were good and above anything else, I didn't want him to have the satisfaction. I wasn't gonna let him win. So, when my last day came, ironically he wasn't even in the office and obviously never said goodbye to me. I was ready. I had been keeping track of every single thing that had happened. More than that, I discovered what I believed to be some pretty serious compliance and data privacy breaches. So I sent an email containing all of it and proof, not only to my boss and everyone on our team, but to numerous HR people. Then I handed in my laptop and left. It was the absolute best feeling to know that I was finally free of this job, and that my boss had been trying to instigate a fight for months, probably thought I was just gonna be submissive and go out with a whimper just to get the fight he wanted on my very last day and not having any way of getting back to me. I obviously immediately blocked his number. I don't really expect there to be any consequences because people like him always get away with their shitty behavior. Maybe HR will give a shit about obvious bullying and why when one of his employees is accused of doing drugs at work, he wouldn't have them do a drug test as per the fucking contract. Lol. Why I was sent away from the office to run personal errands, or why an internal data security breach was left to fester for probably years. Maybe they'll give a shit, probably not. To me, the most important thing is having gotten closure. I just know that he will randomly think of me for the rest of his life and his blood pressure will spike every single time because he never got the last word, while I will always be content when and if he crosses my mind because I never gave in to his stupid provocations, and when I did, it was solely for me and the purpose of getting closure. So I am just going to be proud of having endured a shit job and having the last word in the end. Fuck you, Jerry. Amish Ho Fights says, I had a manager tell me I smelled like weed. He would demonstratively sniff me in front of other employees and say it when others could hear. His manager was nearby the last time he did it. I loudly stated that if he is going to say that in front of my coworkers, then we must go directly to the police and have me tested, right now, for everyone's safety. The big boss freaked the fuck out. Hauled us into a room, quizzed my boss about what was going on, while I explained I was tired of these public accusations and insisted I be tested immediately. I was then asked politely to go back to work while Big Boss stayed in the room with my manager. Big Boss later walked by me, winked, told me not to worry, and my manager has never said a fucking word about it ever since. I asked Big Boss later if there was anything on my employee record about it, and he said, and I quote, not a whiff. Mother Goose 1957 says, well played. I have been through something similar, so I empathize. In my case, I worked for a medical business that had 2 clinics. Our supervisor Frobel worked at the head office, I worked in the satellite clinic in the neighboring suburb. It would take too long to detail the events leading up to the crunch, but one of the many issues was that twice a day, courier bags with paperwork would travel between the 2 clinics. She started accusing me of not sending the paperwork as required in the courier bag. So in self-defense, I started keeping a log and getting it countersigned by another staff member every time I sent the paperwork. So she eventually hauls me into a conference with our boss to complain about me, including that I never sent the paperwork to head office. So I produced my evidence to the contrary. The look on her face was priceless. She sneered, you kept a log? You're a bit paranoid, aren't you? I calmly said, no. I think the fact that I had to produce this today shows that I'm not. It went downhill from there. I knew she wanted me gone and, like you, I didn't want her to have the satisfaction and I wasn't going to let her win. Eventually, a much better job literally fell into my lap and I left of my own accord, but not before informing the boss that I had evidence of her committing Medicare fraud and letting him know that legally he would be responsible for that. I left and 8 weeks later she was gone too. Justaman_097 says, well played. However, I want to let you know one thing. When I was a senior executive, we had one of our directors leave. After he departed, one of the women who was at a lower level in the organization told me that she was glad to see him go because he constantly saying sexual innuendo to her. A number of other women in the area agreed. Had this come out earlier, we would have fired him on the spot. Not every company keeps crappy employees around when they abuse other employees. Story 2, the time my girlfriend dumped me for my friend. So this happened over a decade ago. I was in my mid-20s, and at the time it happened no one really asked for all the details. I just gave everyone the short story, so I have not told this story to that many people. Thought I would share it here as I think it is a pretty good revenge story in the end. Me and my ex were together for almost 5 years. We lived together for about 3. She was like the perfect daughter, except she was pretty lazy and could not hold a job. The last year of our relationship was obviously pretty bad, very rocky, and to be honest, just boring. But we decided we would stick together. I even bought an apartment for us. Since I was the only one with an income, I was also the only one who paid for it. This is how it ended. Friday I come home from work, greet my ex, chat about the day, have a shower. After the shower I get dressed and go grab a cold beer from the fridge. I sit down by my PC and it does not even have time to boot up and I hear, babe, are you happy? I'm not happy. I ask, happy? Yeah, I feel pretty good, blah blah, what do you mean? I knew what she meant. She tells me she has thought about it, and already made up her mind, and she wants out of the relationship. At this point, I have no more fight left in me. She has made up her mind, this is obviously happening. So we have a talk about it, for about 2 hours. The talk went really well. She pretty much agreed on everything I said, I was right about everything, and so on. Being broken up with sucks, but this time, it was the easiest. So I thought we were on the exact same page about how we are going to deal with the breakup and move forward. I even told her I would not kick her out of the apartment, I would let her live in the apartment rent-free since she was unemployed until she finds a new place, and I told her I don't want her to take whatever place she gets offered, I want her to move to a place or area she feels safe in and actually will enjoy living in. Like I mentioned, she agreed, said that everything I said seemed very reasonable. The breakup talk went really smooth. She tells me she will be staying at my mother's place over the weekend so we get some space. My mother was out of town at the time. Once my ex left, I called up my friend and told him what just happened. He told me to come to his place first thing in the morning, we could go grab some breakfast, do something fun, take my mind off things. Saturday I went over around noon to my friend's place, we had some deep talks. He joked about a bunch of silly stuff my ex had said or done over the years and was trying to keep my mind off of the breakup. To sum up the day, this of course, for some reason, ended with us getting wasted and throwing a big party at my friend's place. I had a good time actually, was about to text my ex in the middle of the night something like, I'm really glad we are at least dealing with this breakup like adults, being upfront and all, you are still my best friend, but I actually erased it before I sent it, and did not send her a single text. I come home from the party sometime early Sunday morning, like 67 in the morning. I notice there seems to be things missing from the apartment, books, and curtains. But my still drunk mind does not really process this, so I just go to bed. Sunday I wake up in the afternoon and can now clearly see things are missing. I start going through stuff, and at some point I panic, and like the hipster I am, I look at my vinyl collection. I flip through the records, and as I suspected, one record was gone. It was a signed copy of a record I bought from the artist himself after a concert. It was even signed Best of Luck and Take It Easy Riff Grinder. So it has my name on it. I try to call her, she will not answer the phone. I call my mother, in case she would have been in touch with her. I call her sister to ask if she had heard anything from her, but no, other than the fact we broke up. About an hour later I get a call from my mother. She managed to get in touch with my ex and it turns out she never even stayed at my mother's place. She had been spending the whole weekend at, let us call him Mike's place. Now, at the time, Mike was a friend of mine, a pretty good friend too. I thought. The revenge part, I text my ex that I am happy to see you found a new place to live so quick, since you obviously don't need me anymore. I thought I will pack up the remaining stuff you forgot to pick up during the night while I was away. If you are not here in 2 hours I will just leave it outside on the sidewalk for you. Almost those exact words, but in Swedish since I am Swedish of course. She called me up a minute later. She was in panic, said she can't make it in 2 hours as she needs to find a van or something that can fit all her stuff. She even asked me if I knew somebody who had a van we could borrow. I told her to get a rental and in 2 hours the stuff will be nicely packed up and waiting for her outside and hung up. I then proceed to actually pack up her stuff, and she had a lot of stuff. At some point, I find her old MacBook in her closet. Of all places, she had not used this computer in 2 years, but I could see the little LED light glowing, indicating it was charged. I open the laptop and to my surprise, a Facebook page opens. She was logged into a fake account she had made, with one conversation in her chat history. Mike. Dating back several months, I could not read it at the time. I was torn up and angry. I just scrolled to the first message to see it was like 45 months earlier that they had began chatting through her fake profile. It was very clear from the messages I did read they had initiated a secret relationship and pretty much planned to break up together. I managed to retrieve her login details, and I call up her sister and give her the details and ask her if she wants to know why we broke up. She can just read the chat logs. I also asked her sister not to confront my ex about the chat logs until I had a chance to speak to her about it first, and she informs me she can't read the chat by herself as she feels so embarrassed about her own sister, so she drove to her parents' place to read it together with their mother. Even better. I also stopped packing up my ex stuff after I found the chat. When my ex arrives at my place, she was expecting her stuff nicely packed up for her, but instead the first thing she sees is the laptop on the ground in the hallway, with the conversation open. Her face goes pale. I then tell her that as we speak, her sister and mother is currently reading through the chat logs, and I then tell her to pack up her own stuff by herself. She did. It took like 5 hours or so, and I just sat on the couch observing her. When I closed the door behind her after she had grabbed that last box, I blocked her everywhere, and have never seen her since. And I forgot to mention that I did get the record back when she came by to pick up the stuff. So you can all rest easy, no records were harmed. I still have it. Upset_Pachyderm says, but did you ever get the album back? Devils_Advocate 69 says, then you dealt with Mike. I hope Bob 2 says, he stated all this for the record. Story 3, nailed the lunch stealer at work. We had a community fridge where everyone put their lunches. Everyone had their names on them, or at least on their containers. I was a chef my entire career but had taken a different job as my career was winding down. Something to do with my time. Every job has lunch thieves, it seems. I got mine taken more than others as people knew it was going to be good. I frequently brought fancy sandwiches like banh mi or such. I knew or at least suspected who the thief was, a CPA I'll call Michael, because that's his name. He was on a days-long streak of pilfering, so I made a nice big banh mi and spiked the mayo. Did I mention I also own a hot sauce company? I do. I took Trinidad scorpion pepper powder from peppers and dehydrated and loaded the mayo with it. About an hour before everyone took their lunch break was prime time for lunch thief Michael to go do his dirty work. I looked in the fridge and sure enough, the skunk took the bait. As I walked by the bathroom, his preferred hiding lunch spot, I heard coughing, gagging and finally vomiting. Really grotesque yet satisfying noises. I casually walked in and looked at the red-faced, watery-eyed drooling mess and with much concern asked if he was all right. He mumbled he wasn't feeling well and might have to go home. He was gone the rest of that day and all of the next. Michael, to my knowledge, never stole anyone's lunch again. Smooth_brain_genius says, every company should have a policy of if you are caught with someone else's food, without permission, they are terminated on the spot. Petty and Penny says, well played, Op. GIF. What stood out for me is that Michael would hide out in the bathroom. How pathetic does one have to be to 1 steal someone's lunch then 2 go eat it in the fucking bathroom? Xbox Gamer 2122 says, petty revenge is best served with scorpion pepper powder. Thanks for watching, I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.